Does your baby cough and sputter while taking the bottle? Do you wonder if your care providers are feeding your baby too much? Does your baby go through your milk stash way too much while at daycare or when other people are feeding your baby? Then you may be in need of this tool called paced bottle feeding. So listen in to hear how you can feed your baby in a way, whether you use formula or breast milk, by the way, that can help your baby to tune into their hunger cues and feed in a way that mimics what they do while feeding from the human body. Listen in.
When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. I may have thought I was prepared, but having known only a handful of people who had ever breastfed and only seeing it up close from a couple of them, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a lactation consultant, and a childbirth educator. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh, and I welcome you to the Milk Making Minutes, where we explore breastfeeding experiences through the lens of systemic barriers, so that you know your breastfeeding struggles are not your fault and your triumphs really are the miracles you feel they are.
So, paced bottle feeding is a term that is used to name what we do to help babies feed in a way where they are essentially in control of the feed, but where we help them slow down that feed. The benefits are that the baby controls the flow, the baby's hunger cues are followed, the baby isn't overfed or underfed, and the principles of tuning into hunger signals are carried over into toddlerhood, childhood, and adulthood. And we allow the baby to really slow down the feeding and pace it out so that they are not just guzzling down the milk, because the flow of milk is generally a lot faster from a bottle, even with the slowest flow nipples, than it is from the breast or chest. So, if you look at a lot of images of babies being fed from bottles, do a Google search. You will see lots of babies laying flat on their backs with milk just flowing into their mouths. But if you see most human milk feeding positions, babies being fed from human bodies, that's not how babies are fed from the human body when they are breast or chest feeding. So it's interesting, this discrepancy. Also, think about how you would prefer to drink from a bottle, from a water bottle, or from a soda can. You would never want to lay on your back and be waterboarded. Yet, this is often how we feed human babies, from a bottle. um, so, paced bottle feeding helps us to kind of get back to how human babies prefer to drink. So, what do you do? When you are feeding a baby, whether it's formula or human milk, paced bottle feeding, to get all these benefits I just discussed, you are going to hold the baby upright. So instead of seeing that image of holding the baby really low and flat on their back, they are going to be up high in the crook of your arm. And then you are going to hold the baby really in tight and close so that it's a really snuggly experience. You are going to hold the bottle horizontally. So when you look at the milk, you are only going to see milk in half of the nipple. Do not worry about whether or not the baby is sucking in air. They are not sucking in air. They are working hard to get the milk inside of their body. And you are going to keep the slowest flow nipple, regardless of the age of the baby. You are going to offer the nipple of the bottle and allow the baby to bring the nipple into their mouth instead of just shoving the nipple into their mouth. That's a really minute distinguishment, but it's important that you offer the nipple and then they take it into their mouth. We do this when feeding a baby from our body as well. We bring the baby to our body and then they open their mouth wide and take the nipple and the areola into their mouth. Baby should have most of the bottle nipple and base in the mouth. So if they're just sucking on the nipple and they don't have any of the base into the mouth, kind of like a straw, especially if the baby is also fed at the breast, that is going to be problematic for when that baby then goes back to the breast. The tip of the bottle, so you're going to tip the bottle downward every few suckles to allow the baby to swallow and take some breaks. So the base of the bottle, you can leave the nipple in the baby's mouth, but you'll just tip the bottle downward so that the gravity allows the liquid to kind of come down to the bottom of the bottle and the baby doesn't have access to that milk for a minute and they can take a minute to take a breather, swallow the milk and just take a minute to organize their sucking and organize themselves. This is similar to that tip we often hear of putting our fork down on the plate in between bites so we can chew our food. Remember the experience of eating the food, the sensation of the food in our mouth and swallow. You'll notice that when a baby is breastfeeding, they will often take some moments themselves naturally to kind of stop, rest a minute, swallow. So if they're working a little harder to take in the milk at the bottle, they will need these moments of rest as well. And it's great to give them the opportunity to do that. Halfway through the feed, remove the bottle from the baby's mouth, have a little snuggle, give them the opportunity to burp, and then switch sides. Often the baby's neck development will become uneven, especially if we're always using our strong arm to hold the baby and feed the baby from the weak arm or vice versa. And the baby is always looking at us from one side. And so just like with breastfeeding, when the parent switches sides, it's really good for the baby's musculature development to switch sides in the middle of the feed. And it's great if the duration of the entire bottle feeding can last between 15 and 30 minutes. And then after that feeding, again, removing the bottle, doing a little burping, having a nice snuggle session. And if a baby often tends to be really fussy after a bottle feeding, if they spit up a lot, if they're really gassy, keeping that baby upright for a good long while, for a good 15, 20, 30 minutes after the feed, on the shoulder, in a carrier. So completely vertical can help that milk to settle in the belly. After that feeding, and it might help their tummy to settle a little more. So those are the principles of paced bottle feeding. If you would like a free paced bottle feeding guide from me, then you can join my Milk Making Minutes community group on Facebook. I would love to provide that for you. and you can provide it to any caregiver who might be feeding your baby. So whether that's your partner or maybe a grandparent or a daycare provider who might be feeding your baby too fast and going through your breast milk stash too quickly. So join my Milk Making Minutes community group, and I'll have that linked in the resources there so that you can grab that anytime you want. A little freebie there for joining the group. And if you are looking for someone to help support you as you return to work, or try to pump enough milk, or build up your stash, or just as you're navigating feeding your baby from your own body or from a bottle, I would love to be the person who does that for you. I would love to offer you non-judgmental support to help you feed your baby in the way that feels best for you. So go to my website, www.quabbinbirthservices.com, and reach out to me there. Send me an email by filling out the contact form, and we can get started.